Hello and welcome, I'm Suyash Maheshwari and you are watching Last Tick here on News9, where we bring to you the day's action on the D Street. Now, Indian markets ended in the green with the last tick for Nifty coming in at 21,453 mark. Now, overall, it was a very volatile session for the Indian markets. We opened in the green. Soon after, we slipped in the red in the morning trade, and from there on, the market was able to stage a recovery, and both Sensex and Nifty in fact hit a record high by the afternoon trade, with Nifty even scaling the 21,500 mark for the very first time. However, the bulls could not close the show on a high, as in the last half an hour of trading we saw some bit of a profit booking take place, but there was nothing big, and therefore the correction was not concerning at all. Now moving on to how the markets are looking after today's trade. Nifty ended about 0.12% higher, marginally below the 21,450 marks, just about 6 points shy of it. Sensex on the other hand ended about 0.17% higher, below the 71,500 sort of levels. The mid cap and the small cap indices, which are facing some sort of a resistance in the last 2-3 sessions, ended today's session in the red. The Nifty mid cap 100 index slipped and was down by about 0.35% at 45,523 mark, whereas the small cap index was down about 0.1%. And it faced resistance around the 15,000 mark, which it had toppled for the very first time in yesterday's trade. And India VIX, the volatility index, saw a mild day-on-day correction. It slipped by about 0.66%. But at 13.81 sort of levels, it's still relatively high. We have not seen these sort of levels since May earlier this year. But let's also look at the market movement over the last 2 days. After the sharp up move on Thursday and Friday, the market was looking, to take a breather or consolidation of some sort, and that's what we got today. We saw a dip which gave room for investors to join the rally. Investors who had missed this rally because of the swift up move in the last 2 sessions, and even the dip, if you see it, it was rather shallow. So it's not like there was any sort of a panic selling taking place. But I think the only things that the bulls would have wanted was Nifty to end above the 21,500 mark and India VIX to drop slightly. And even if you look at the market statistics, if that you see on your screen, the advance to decline ratio is 1:1. Almost about 1,200 odd shares advanced in today's trade on the NSE, whereas about 1,300 shares declined, and about 105 shares were locked in the upper circuit today, whereas about 40 stocks hit a lower circuit. Among the stocks that hit 52-week high, there were about 204 stocks, whereas about 6 stocks only hit a 52-week low. Let's also bring on board Mr. Avinash Gorakshakar. Hello sir, how are you? Now there's a lot of optimism in the market currently, and most of the analysts are factoring in a big rate cut both in the US and in India. We also have the general elections next year, and the broader expectation is that there'll be political continuity this time around, which again is a positive for the market. So my question to you is, stepping into 2024, if someone is looking to build a portfolio from the scratch for the next 5 to 10 years, how and where should they invest?
Yeah, good afternoon, Suyash. I think the markets definitely are looking well positioned, considering the fact that now after the state elections, the political uncertainty from the markets has to a large extent got diminished, and that's the reason we have seen a very large bump up post the state election victory results, about 2 weeks back. So I think coming back to what kind of stocks and what kind of sectoral allocations I think the investor should do, I would believe that I think on a sectoral basis, sectors like automotive, auto components, capital goods, real estate, building products, cement, these are sectors where I think you could find opportunities. But my sense is I think there's no hurry to get into the stocks as of now. I think the markets have jumped quite significantly. So maybe one can wait for a reasonably mild correction and then start building up the portfolio. I would believe that the first 6 months ahead of the elections, we would see a lot of volatility in the markets, Suresh. and that would give plenty of opportunity for investors who want to invest over the next, say, 3 to 4 years, and get a reasonably risk reward. So I would believe that it's always better to do a sip and look at market declines as an opportunity rather than buying immediately as of now, because I believe the markets would definitely look at a lot of volatility ahead of the general elections.
All right. And sir, there is obviously a lot of talk about, rate cuts taking place starting next year. And, Mr. Powell, Jerome Powell, the US Fed chair, had also indicated that, the rate cuts are just around the corner. But from then, a lot of about three, Fed members have come out and said, pretty much hold your horses. We are not even looking at rate cuts right now. So who do we believe? Like Mr. Powell's comments that rate cuts are around the corner, or the caution that has been flagged by other governors, because the markets have been factoring in rate cuts very aggressively?
No, I think you're right in saying that after the Fed Governor Mr. Powell's commentary after the last Fed meeting, markets have actually reacted extremely positively, because he has clearly stated that he could look at least 3 rate cuts in 2024. Now, when this happens is going to be a big, question. But I think probably the markets are factoring in possibly the first rate cut to happen sometime in April or May. My sense is that the rate cut decision would entirely be dependent upon how data comes out, how inflation pans out. Because I think the Fed is very clear they want to bring down inflation to 2%. They also want to ensure that corporate growth as well as the economy in the US actually does very well. Unless there is some certainty on the numbers, maybe we'll have to wait for the next few months, and probably in February or March, you could get some indication as to when the rate cut could happen. I think any letdown in the data as far as inflation is concerned could obviously delay the decision in rate cuts, and we could also see the rate cuts happening in the second half of 2024. So I think we'll have to wait and watch, Suresh. But I think yes, markets are excited, and if there is any letdown in the inflation number, that could lead to a little disappointment in the rate cut decision expected by the markets.
Mr. Gorakshakar, from what I understand from you is that there are a lot of uncertainty, political uncertainty stemming from the general elections that are next year, uncertainty about the rate cuts both in India and the US. So do you think the markets are rather over-optimistic at this point in time?
See, I think markets always are greedy, Suresh. So I think they never go, logically and rationally. So I think what you're seeing now is over-optimism. The clear fact of the matter is, if you look at the secondary and the primary market, specifically the primary markets, I think liquidity is extremely strong. We are seeing, new IPOs getting oversubscribed almost 100, 200, 300 times. So yes, you are right. Markets are optimistic, overly optimistic, but at the end of the day, the broader market could still present good opportunities. So I think, you got to take stock by stock and specifically look at each company separately. But the broader market seems to have got, elevated quite strongly in a very short period of time. So we'll have to be very careful in our stock selection strategy. 2024 is going to be a very, dicey year as far as stock picking is concerned, because ultimately it's stocks which make money. The broader indices are more or less, have shown that kind of upside. So I think the markets will consolidate now for some more time.
All right. And, talking about sectors, I remember you mentioned a couple of names, auto being one and banks being the other. What other sector could perhaps, take the markets higher? Because we have seen some of these sectors have not really participated. FMCG, which was a laggard in the last couple of weeks, has only joined the rally. Today it has rallied by about 1% or so. So what sectors are the ones that, there are pockets of opportunity still?
No, I think, see, as far as pockets of opportunity are concerned, Suresh, you can look at specialty chemicals, which still, is away from its 52-week high. You could also look at agrochemicals. You could also look at IT, because clearly, if the US economy does well, then I think the clear signal is over the next 1 or 2 quarters, you could see, new orders being lined up by US companies. So I think IT is considered to be by me as a dark horse. The other sector could be agrochemicals. Large agrochemical companies suffered last year because of over inventory in the system, and which now has got corrected. Hopefully next year, if the, ahead of the monsoon, the first half is normally a very remunerative period for agrochemical companies. So you could see a lot of action from the agrochemical, the IT space, and the specialty chemicals, which are basically just recovering now. And hopefully, they could offer a better alpha and a better risk reward if the investor is willing enough to put in some more time here.
All right. And Avinash, also wanted to pick your brains on SpiceJet. You know, we have seen a tremendous rally. The stock has really taken off in the last 6 months. It's up about 75% in a month, 140% or so in the last 6 months. And I mean, I have two questions here. First, what do you make of this bid that, SpiceJet has placed for Go First? Because SpiceJet itself has its own debt burden to take care of. So, you know, why take on more financial stress to acquire a dead airline pretty much? And second, what about this price movement that we have seen in SpiceJet stock? So, if I'm an investor, should I book profits or, you know, continue riding that momentum?
No, I think Suyash, you are absolutely right in saying the financial, the capital structure for SpiceJet is extremely, delicate. I think a largely over-leveraged balance sheet, and I think at this point of time, my sense is that they should actually, obviously, have their house in order. They should ensure that their balance sheet becomes stronger before they take over any other sick airline, because obviously the sick airline will have its own liabilities, its debts on the books. So probably they are thinking that they would get the airline at a fairly large discount, after a very big haircut by the banks. But the other point why the stock price has moved is largely because of the preferential issue. I think the markets are excited that there are investors who are willing to put money at a significant premium and put in more money at this stage. But I think everything depends on execution, Suresh. I think if this airline does take off in the next, say, 2 to 3 quarters in terms of data points, then I think, this momentum which you are seeing may not last for a very long time. And I think the airline business, you have to have deep pockets. And with the overly leveraged balance sheet, this could definitely make the company go into a little bigger problem going forward.
All right, that's the view from Mr. Avinash Gorakshakar. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on Last Tick. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Last Tick. Keep watching News9.
तो पता लग ही जाएगा सलमान खान का करेंगे मारेंगे या जोधपुर में मारेंगे तो पता लग जाएगा
This is someone who is sitting inside our jails and is still very obviously and openly running and possibly the largest organized criminal operation in the country.
Student organization of Punjab University में सोपू का acting president type भी रहा है.
He was a troublemaker, getting into fights with people, not coming to the class.
As on git, it appears that Lawrence gang is the most important, the prominent gang. Gangs here in Punjab, they are intimidated.
Today he is India's most dangerous gangster, and India's presence are apparently no bar to how Bishnoi runs India's largest criminal empire.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Hello, good afternoon. You're watching Business Plus. I'm Shweta Kothari. We're bringing you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. First up, the top story that we're tracking at this hour, cash-strapped airline SpiceJet has now shown interest in buying bankrupt airline Go First. Now, SpiceJet says it will submit an offer on the airline post due diligence and hopes to create a viable airline by combining the two entities. Now, Go First, remember, had filed for voluntary insolvency